Hello again, my friends, and you are my friends, and welcome back to Talking Knockouts, the show from HDR Media, where we now dive into the world of boxing. As always, I'm joined by our boxing aficionado, Matt Phillips. Matt, welcome in. Boxing loves a trilogy.
Boxing does love a trilogy. Absolutely. I mean, look, we're looking at Canelo versus Triple G.
Triple G.
Gennady Golovkin.
Yeah.
Gennadovich Golovkin. Try saying that after a couple of points. And, that shows you how big these fighters are in that you can refer to them with their nicknames and people know exactly who you're talking about. Canelo versus Triple G. Almost as like a wrestling match, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
But you're right, boxing does love a trilogy, and we've had Wilder and Fury in more recent times. We've had obviously Ali and Frazier was one of the biggest trilogies ever. Ali said he was the closest that he was to death in a ring.
Yeah.
In that fight. I like my personal favorite is Barrera versus Morales. That was a trilogy. I'll post the link on YouTube for the first fight to that because that's on Top Ranks Boxing, and that is probably one of the greatest fights ever. And then you've got Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward, and people might have seen, I think it's called The Fighter, Mickey Ward film, The Fighter, which is kind of centered around those fights. So, but absolutely, boxing does love a trilogy, and hopefully tonight, or in the early hours of tomorrow morning, Canelo versus Triple G will deliver.
Yes, certainly will. It's another big light, big night under the Las Vegas lights. Where is it actually being held? Is it being held in the All Giant
T-Mobile? No, in the
T-Mobile
arena, which is mostly where they have the UFC bouts. But it's in there. Okay. So to give you a little bit of context, so we're in Mexican Independence Day holiday.
Oh, okay, brilliant.
So that's the reason why Canelo kind of took over. Mayweather always used to like to fight on Cinco de Mayo, the other Mexican holiday, and Independence Day, because that's where all the big punters come into Vegas. And so, since Mayweather kind of bowed out of the game, albeit professionally, even though he's still fighting exhibitions, with Alvarez being Mexican, he's taken those dates over. So that's the reason why it's fallen here. And the other two fights have also fallen on Mexican Independence Day weekends in 2017 and 2018. And of course, 2017, I mean, that was when they both came to the table. Canelo had only lost to Mayweather. Golovkin was still undefeated. And in my eyes, the fight ended a draw. But in my eyes, Golovkin won it quite handily, I think. I can still remember my card, 116, 112. This is 5 years ago. I can still remember it really well. And in the shock of them going.
You're not the only one. I've got some comments from both fighters, obviously, after the weigh-in. Golovkin was met with jeers as he saluted the pair of their patriotic day. He said, "Come on, if you're a real boxing fan, you know who won those fights." And Canelo hit back saying, "He will see what happens in the ring. My aim is to knock him out." So you're saying Triple G is right. Everyone knows, really, if they're,
Yeah, Triple G was at the height of his powers at that particular point.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it was. Oh, losing myself. Yeah, 100. Can you still hear me?
I can.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, I had it 116, 112, but unfortunately, the judges didn't see it that way. 115, 113 to Golovkin, 118 to 110 to Canelo. That was the last big fight that Adelaide Bird. That's the last time which not been seen since. That's probably the reason why. And then the other judge had it 114, 114. So it ended up as a draw. And it felt like a robbery to me. And a lot, like you say, a lot of big boxing pundits, Teddy Atlas on his show this week, saying, it was a bit of a robbery. They used latex gloves, so they didn't leave any fingerprints. It was a robbery. And of course, it set up the second fight, which I have to admit, a lot of people thought Golovkin won again. But I actually had it down, and I agreed with the actual official scorecards on that. Everyone had it 115, 113, and one had it a draw. And I probably thought Canelo just about nicked it. You could argue, I mean, Boxing News here in the UK, they had Golovkin winning both of those fights. But I felt we probably should be at one apiece. I feel like probably Canelo just did enough to nick it on the evening. In the first fight, Golovkin coming in with this unbelievable knockout to fight ratio. I think it was up there with Deontay Wilder at one point. And this is at middleweight. Tonight's going to be at super middleweight for all the time. This was at middleweight. He really pressed the fight, and he kind of walked Canelo down a little bit. This was before Canelo started trying to play up with higher weights. We'll come back to that in a minute. And he pressed him down. And I thought he won kind of bullied him in a way, kind of handedly. But like I say, the judges didn't get it. And then the roles reversed a little bit in the second fight, in that Canelo came in a little bit bigger, and he pressed Golovkin a little bit. Golovkin's a master of cutting the ring down and not giving you any space to move. He got a bit behind his jab, I think, in the second fight. Probably gave Canelo a little bit more freedom. And Golovkin did probably rally in the latter stages of the fight from memory. This is 2018. But Canelo probably just did enough. So I do wonder what we're going to see tonight, because,
tomorrow morning.
Because Golovkin is now 40 and Canelo is 32. But of course, he's been playing up between all the weights. He went up to, as you remember, we done our last show which featured him. He went up to light heavy. Golovkin said he's gone up to light heavy thinking he's invincible, can beat anybody. And of course, he got beaten quite handily, actually, on points by Dmitry Bivol. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when he comes back down and defends all the title this evening.
This is it. We've had the weigh-in, obviously, and the big shock is that Triple G weighs heavier than Canelo, so he's come in heavier than Canelo. But he is, as you say, making that step up to a different weight category. But his belts are not on the line, obviously. This is a blood brew. Is this a blood feud? This is where two friends were really close and are now bitter enemies, aren't they?
Well, I wouldn't say they were like really close. They were probably respectful of each other. And Canelo, even in the press conference this week, has been saying he's a great fighter, Hall of Fame fighter, which they both are, goes without saying. But what caused probably the bad blood was the robbery of the first one. Golovkin losing his unbeaten, the draw, and then losing his unbeaten record in the second one, but losing his perfect record. He's got the draw there. And then in between those two fights, it was discovered that Canelo had tested positive for a banned substance called clenbuterol, which is found in Mexican beef. And Canelo, in the end, did actually serve under the radar, served a 6-month ban, and it actually ended it in time for the rematch a year later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he always maintained it was Mexican beef. But a lot of people will say, compare Canelo in the first fight to the second fight, and as I said earlier, he was a little bit bigger. He was on the front foot in the second fight, so we'll never know. There is lots of stories of sports people being caught out by what they've eaten in Mexico. I think the young lads who've gone out with England football teams have had the Mexican beef, and they've had traces of all this. So it is there. I'm not for once saying that Canelo is a drug cheat particularly, but black and white, he did have to serve a ban.
But he got caught out by a substance in a meat product that you perhaps wouldn't know was there. That's what you're saying.
That's what they're saying.
But that's athletes, though. They've got to be really careful, these athletes. They have to learn and be really so careful what they put in their bodies. They have to.
Yeah, exactly. So there's always going to be a question mark over the fact that, was he on this substance in the first fight, and all that kind of thing. It got discovered afterwards, and he served that, what I say, the quiet 6-month ban. But I mean, look, you can't. Canelo is great for boxing, I think, regardless of this feud that these two have got going. And Golovkin's great for boxing. I really like both of them. And what's great about Canelo is that he will fight anybody, literally anybody. Like I say, he moved up to light heavy and decided he wanted to fight Dmitry Bivol. Had he won that, I think you would have been talking about him either fighting Makubu at cruiserweight, who got knocked out by Tony Bellew in Goodison Park a good few years back, hasn't lost since, got the title back and has retained it since. Or you could even been thinking of a mega catchweight fight of Canelo versus Usyk. Imagine that. Moving up to heavy. You may still look, regardless of him losing to Bivol, he's still the huge name. It's why he's under the bright lights on Mexican holiday days in Vegas. You could still see those fights.
So he's not lost the sheen. He's not lost the shine, thanks to that. Because last time we spoke about Canelo, you were raving like he was a machine, unbeatable. I can't remember who he squared off against that night, but it was
Caleb Plant, probably.
That's the Caleb Plant. But has the sheen worn off a little bit now since the
maybe? I mean, listen, this is his 5th fight in 18 months.
Wow.
There's not many. Look, Mayweather only ever fought twice every 18 months, or maybe twice a year. But he's active. He says, I want to give fans the big fights. I mean, it's great for entertainment. Like I say, you've gone,
Absolutely,
he starts at welterweight, moves up to light heavy, and here we are talking about potential cruiserweight or catchweight heavyweight fights. So whether or not he's lost his sheen, I don't know, because he got beaten quite handily by Bivol. And we did say on our Talking Knockouts, we thought it was going to be a tough ask.
Yep.
And you know, and he was much smaller in the ring, and Bivol didn't wear much damage, and he beat him quite handily with a 1-2, really. But whether or not Golovkin, whether it comes down to back down to super middleweight, and whether or not Golovkin has got has he got the skills? But I feel like with Golovkin a little bit, he's 40 years old. He's inactive. He's been inactive. Now that's someone who has lost his sheen since the first two fights. 100% he has, because they obviously went back to back on the first two, and then he's kind of gone under the radar a little bit. Like I say, he was an absolute savage. I mean, he's been under the radar most of his career. Actually, even though he's from Kazakhstan, he was located in Stuttgart in Germany and fought 18, 20 fights just in Germany under the radar. And he came to my attention when on Sky there was a guy from Wales called Kerry Hope, middleweight European title. Yep. And he fought a guy called Gregor Protsa from Poland, and Protsa won that. And then it was announced that Protsa would fight this guy called Gennady Golovkin. I was like, who's this? And Golovkin absolutely rinsed the hell out of him. It was Golovkin's debut in New York. It was in Verona in New York. And he absolutely smashed him to bits. And I was like, who the hell is this guy? I was like,
yeah, he would be.
Straight like that. And that was his American bout. And he went up from there. But I feel sorry for him, because I feel like he did win that first fight. He did lose the second fight in my book. And he's just he's barely fought really in about 5 years. I think it's something like his fifth fight. It should be his fifth fight in 5 years. And he was very active before then and knocking people out.
What does that do to a boxer when they become that sort of fairly inactive?
Well, I mean, people say, you get, even though it's their livelihood, they're living, they've done it their whole lives. You can't replicate being in the ring to, the training, and you do get ring rust. And I do think when he won, even though he beat the Japanese champion Murata in his last fight in Japan, he did look really ring rusty. And of course, you've got the age thing as well. But you've still got the power. It's still there. But have you still got the engine? Have you still got the chin? He's always had a great chin, as has Canelo. But it's like Man United when they lost Ferguson. It's still the same players, but there's just one ingredient that's just kind of faded.
The je ne sais quoi, the magic.
Yeah, it just feels like, exactly. It just feels like, and I'm a massive Golovkin fan, as I've just said, and it just feels like something's faded from him. And I had friends who was watching the Murata fight, and we were texting each other back and going, "Oh my God, he looks terrible. He looks ring rusty. He hasn't got the timing." And then suddenly he brought it out of nowhere. He brought it out of nowhere and got the stoppage. I think it was Murata's first loss, and he won the middleweight title there. But of course, going against Canelo up at super middle, 168 pounds. He's gone from 160 to 168.
Is he going to do it?
It's such a tough ask. And, Teddy Atlas this week, Hall of Fame trainer, was saying, is there one final roar in this lion, in Golovkin, which is a great line. That's a great way of summing it up. But if you look back on the first two fights, he's won the first one.
You mentioned he's got the Rio. You mentioned the chin, Matt, and I'm just thinking back to that first fight where the whole Triple G, the Terminator meme came in, where Canelo literally lands one of the most purest punches I think I've seen in boxing, and Triple G just walks it off like it was nothing, like it was almost like it was a cartoon program where he just carries on. Terminator was born that night. For those that don't see it, go and just Google Triple G Terminator. Would be one of the first sort of videos that comes up. So his chin, and that never goes, regardless of how inactive you are. Your chin is your chin generally as a boxer.
A lot of people will say that's a mind game thing as well, because you can't train your chin, can you? It's how do you react psychologically when you've actually taken one right on the button.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean they've both got great chins. I don't think either have ever been down. I remember Canelo getting rocked once in one of his early fights. I remember Canelo now he's 32. He's been professional for 17 years. This is his 62nd fight, I think, this evening. He's turned pro at 15. Fair play to both. But Golovkin had it all, like you say. You rightly say he had that chin. He just walked through shots. He was knocking out people. I remember you know, after that Protzker fight, he fought Matthew Macklin, one of the Sky commentators now. Buried him with a body shot, which broke 3 ribs, I think, in Macklin.
Ouch.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it. It was unbelievable left hand. And Macklin went down on the floor, completely waved off. I tell you, did well against Golovkin at his peak was Martin Murray from the Northwest. I can't remember, he's from St Helens, I think, Martin Murray. Sort of always on the periphery of world title fights. He had a few world title fights, unlucky not to have maybe won a couple. Arguably he got robbed in a couple, but he really gave Golovkin a good fight over. It was stopped in 10 rounds in the end. It was in Monte Carlo. I don't know if they still do that. They used to take the hall of the casino in Monte Carlo and just get dignitaries there in their bow ties and their tuxes and have the ring in the middle. So there's only about 100 people there and have these big fights. And Golovkin fought Murray in that atmosphere. So it's completely quiet. So you can hear all the shots. You know, it's almost like you're
inside. You would do it 100 people, Matt. Like, you hear everything.
Yeah. And Murray really
everything.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I used to quite like those. No atmosphere, but it was just weird.
Why,
and
why did they stop doing those?
I'm not sure. They might have stopped after the pandemic. I know, like, it was on Sky. It was always an Eddie Hearn show they would put on. Whether or not it would have been Eddie Hearn. Martin Murray was with Eddie Hearn. I don't know if they're still doing those. I don't know. But Murray did. I think he went down 3 times, but he went 10 rounds, and that was more than what a lot of people were doing with Golovkin. And then that feeds into you know, now you're counting down to these fights with Canelo, and like I say, the draw for the first one and then the loss in the second, and Golovkin lost his shin, and now Father Time is catching up. You don't see many fighters, certainly at lighter weights, going into their 40s, certainly. And you know, albeit he only turned 40 back in the summer.
Yeah,
you know, he's still got. You know, can he still take the shots? Has he still got the power? We just don't know. And at the moment, even in his peak of years, it hasn't been enough, has it, for the judges to score it for him? So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting one. This.
It is going to be an interesting one. You've got to really say it to me, because I've not Googled or looked up a lot about this fight, barely anything, in fact. And it's a fight that I remember seeing the very first one, but I don't remember seeing the second. And then it sort of dropped off my radar and has suddenly come back onto it.
Yeah. They both kind of went their separate ways, really, after that. I mean, maybe there's some thinking there that we always felt like there was going to be a third one, you know? And I think maybe there was some thinking with the Canelo camp saying, well, actually, we'll offer up the third fight, but let's just wait until Golovkin is a little bit older, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, personally speaking, like I say, Canelo, I think he's great for boxing. Keeps floating up to high weights. He wants to give the fans the big fights. I mean, everyone would be all in if you fought Usyk, which was, you know, even though it sounds crazy what we're talking here, that was on the table at one point. You know, you might still see that. You might still see him fight Makubu. I don't think particularly Canelo loses a fight. It loses his sheen a little bit. If he does lose tonight, you probably will see the fourth fight, which is rarity in boxing in the modern age. I mean, you used to get like, you know, Jake LaMotta, Ray Robinson, numerous fights. I think we've had Pacquiao versus one Manuel Marquez.
Silly in the end, though, doesn't it? You get silly in the end, because like if you have a fourth fight and it goes 2-2, do you have a fifth fight?
Exactly. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Like when, like,
but you know, while it's making money.
Well, this is it. It's rare you get trilogies, I guess, in boxing where it's an equal score. Like if it's 1-1, then the trilogy is always on the cards. Where it's 2-0, that's incredibly rare to get that trilogy.
I mean, it's not 1-1, is it?
Yeah, but it's not though, is it? The facts and the figures will not.
No, exactly. And at the moment, it should be 1-1, really. At the moment, we're sitting Canelo 1, Golovkin 0, 1 draw. So it should be 1-1, really, and this should really be the decider. What do I think is going to happen? Probably I would love to see Golovkin win, like I say, because I do feel like he's been robbed in these fights, but certainly the first one. But I think Canelo, will probably go 12 rounds, and I think Canelo, you know, the scorecard says it all. I thought he won the first fight, Golovkin, 116, 112. They ended up a draw, and Canelo edged the second fight, and I think it will probably be very similar scorecards again, probably those lines is what I'm thinking.
I keep losing you, so I'm going to have to wrap up the show because now I've got a frozen screen on me. Your connection has not been good for the last 19 minutes, so we have to wrap up because I've now got an unfrozen screen, but I've got a blurry screen. You keep coming in and keep coming out. I believe it's you. It might be me. I don't know. I've got 2 questions before we go. First of all, who wins tonight? What round and how?
Well, I'm going to go. I think it'll be points, and I think it's going to be Canelo. And I would say it'll probably be very similar scorecast to the second one. I think Canelo will just edge it 115, 113. So it could be a points thing. But whether or not that's the end of Golovkin's story, I don't know. I hope he can. Whether or not he's still got something left in the tank to go back to middleweight and defend his own titles, I don't know. But it's going to be fun. It's about 20 quid on DAZN, I think, and you get DAZN for the next month thrown in as well.
It's 5 a.m. in the morning, Matt.
You can watch it on DAZN on there on demand. So it's spoiler free, and you'll get DAZN for the next month as well within that price. In the States, it's $85, which is about 75 quid here. Mental price.
Yeah, the price of the dollars to pound exchange is not good anyway. Yeah. And the last question, EJ Norris, do you reckon Tyson Fury and AJ will fight? Do you reckon Tyson Fury and AJ will fight?
Yeah, I do. We'll probably find out a little bit more this week. The contracts have been sent to Matchroom, to Eddie Hearn and Frank Smith at Matchroom, so they're going to look through those. They're talking about December the 3rd in Cardiff. Okay. Watch this space this week. Might be some more updates there. But yeah, I do think that's going to happen. Yeah, absolutely. And we mentioned that on Talking Knockouts. We said that could be Joshua's way back against Fury. So we'll see.
The redemption story. Right, we're back when there's more boxing to talk about. But until then, he is the boxing aficionado, the media mogul, Matthew Phillips. Thank you for joining. Hit the like button, subscribe if you're brand new here. The connection with him is not always that dodgy. But until next time, we'll see you later.